right, everyone. Welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. I'm your host, Josh Silvestro, brand ambassador of Command Your Brand, where we help CEOs and founders get on top-rated podcasts. Grab our new book, rated the #1 PR book on Amazon, bestpodcastbook.com. A reminder before we get into today's conversation to comment on and like this video and smash the subscribe button if you want to command your brand through the power of podcasting. In this episode, we actually have a very special guest speaker who I kind of adore these group of people where they're really passionate about their books. And, authors are like, I call them the writers of the future. They are just people who shape the world because I believe that communication is what solves the problems of life. If there's no communication, there's no problems that needs to be solved. So I would say this is definitely a very important subject that we should all talk about, which is the subject of education. And I'm here to introduce you guys to a very special guest speaker who is not only, she runs her own private school. She's also raised 5 beautiful kids, and she's also now an author of a new book. And I want her in this episode, we're going to talk about this book here. So I'll introduce you guys to Barbie Rivera. So Barbie, thanks for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I guess we'll first start off with, for people who don't know who you are and they want to get to know you a little bit better, could you, tell us where you're from and then also a little bit about your background and why you decided to write the book that you have today?
Okay. I am born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. I moved to Miami when I was 18, and I really was intending to make my impact in art. I can paint, I can draw. I'm not very trained at it, like I'm not formally trained. But that was my passion. I had my first son, then I had my daughter, then I had my other boys. It was like one right after the other, which in my family was normal. I come from a very large family. Anyway, so I got passionate about education. Like I set my art supplies aside because my son was 6 and in a public school, the second Friday of school, like they didn't even give him a chance to get settled in. Second Friday of school, the teacher pulled me aside and told me my son was mentally handicapped, those are her words, and would most likely need drugs for the rest of his life to help him learn. And I did not accept that. It's not that my son was special needs. He's not. He's bilingual. He went on sleepovers. He did all of those things. But he does not need to be drugged.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating thing. Like I've noticed it's grown in the past, at least for me, it's been at least 20, 30 years where it's just the society now is reliant on drugs just to do daily activities. And it's kind of wild because I have my fair share of experience where I've encountered that when I was a younger individual where they wanted to feed me drugs of some kind because I was dyslexic and had ADHD and other stuff. And it was like baffling of like, how can they determine that in so little time they've spent with me?
Yeah, well, that's why I ended up writing a book about it, right? And it was after my kids are all grown and they've all graduated. In between, I became a single parent, which was its own, I could write a book about that. But I was homeschooling and I was really good at homeschooling. And I had 15 kids coming to my home from other families that I would teach reading, writing, math. And finally, one parent was like, you can't keep this to yourself. I will help you. And she put up the money so that I could become a private school. And again, I'm like a one-room schoolhouse in Miami. I'm in a shopping center, which we want to get into a building and a campus, but you're talking major money there. Again, that's one of the reasons why I wrote the book. So people, one, they know who I am because I'm not coming at the education system as a spectator. I don't like that when it's done to me, like, oh, let me tell you all the things that are wrong. And by the way, I'm not going to lift a finger to help, right? No, I've done it. I did it. And what I accomplished with my son, I dare say there's a psychologist, an educator, or a psychiatrist who could produce children like mine are. They were making money early. They were fast thinkers, high IQ, and that came from homeschooling. And I will never back down on that theme. So if I look at this, I look at myself. I've never gone to college. I'm a high school graduate. I was a decent student. I was probably lazy because I really just wanted to do art. So the other subjects I didn't find important. So I didn't put the effort in. That said, I still graduated in the top 5% of my class without trying, really.
Yeah.
So I feel like if I can homeschool a mentally handicapped child into success, then how many other children are being labeled mentally handicapped that actually are not? And how many lives are we losing because they're being told that they can't learn? That's such the term is even, to me, unacceptable, because my son could learn. He was bilingual when he was 6, fully Spanish speaking. I don't speak 2 languages. So clearly he could learn. He knew how to play basketball. He knew how to, he could do some things in the kitchen for himself. Like, he wasn't a mommy feed me. He could feed himself. Like, if it was a snack time, he knew how to work a toaster. He was capable. I mean, he was 6, but he was capable. And the school system ruined him. At the end of first grade, I kept him in first grade, which I feel like I left him in a burning building because I knew he wasn't happy. And I knew he wasn't making progress. And I knew all the adults in that building had it was a one-way thought. He needs to be on drugs. He needs to be on drugs. He needs to be on drugs. And I don't want that for my child. I was pregnant with number 4. So I'm like, I could not homeschool him. That was what I thought. And actually I could have. And so I left him in school. And at the end of first grade, he was convinced he was stupid. And those were his words. And I'm like, that's unacceptable for a child. Even if he was special needs, he should feel on top of the world. He should feel on top of the world. And he was blessed with, while his father and I, we didn't stay together. We go to dinner once a month with all the kids. It's like we're in communication, and we were united on our children. We were united. And so my son grew up in a very loving household. So he had many benefits that some children don't have. So and he was very well-mannered, and he was very respectful, and he wanted to learn. He wanted to go to school. It was a big deal. And then it was he was just destroyed right out of the gate. Right out of the gate.
Yeah. It's so funny too. It's like, because I grew up in that era of like, I think I actually stayed probably in a public school until about 4th grade. And that's where it was like, my parents were like, you're done, because they want to feed you drugs. And we're just like, we're done, And I found that very weird to me that like they really didn't have a causative thing to actually do anything, because it was just, well, this is the solution because there's something wrong with your son. So we have to give you something for it. So I kind of see what you're talking about, like how there's this weird commotion or this weird thing going on in the school system that relies on something else besides what they actually need to do, and actually the solution to actually help it, which they don't seem like they have.
Right. And plus, when you go back 100 years or 150 years and you find out that America was very literate, you're like, okay, so what's this all about? Now we're throwing billions of dollars at a system that, to me, and again, my opinion, controversy, but is in the pocket of the pharmaceutical companies. I don't want a pharmaceutical representative, a psychologist or a psychologist. I don't want the mental health. I don't want any of that mixed with the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s.
Right.
It's unnecessary.
Yeah. And so what was the moment that you realized like, this was enough, and that's like, I have to like change something with this? Like, what was the moment that you noticed that was like, I have to change something, or something's going to fail, or my kids are not going to make it in life?
Well, there was a very clear one, and it was towards the end of first grade that my son, it was actually probably spring break. So that's 3 months before the first grade ended, before the end of the year. And I asked, I guess Damon was 6. So his sister, I had 2 in diapers and then a 3-year-old. So yeah. I'm busy. Yeah. And I asked him, I'm like, hey, Damon, could you go get me the diaper bag? Like, I never made my kids take, you got to change your baby. Nothing like that. But I'm like, you can go get the diaper bag. And he told me, he goes, I don't know how. And I'm like, oh my God, it's a bag. Literally, you put your hand on it, you pick it up, you walk it 5 feet, and you put it down. And so that was it. I'm like, my son, if I don't have his back now, he's going to be on drugs, his own drugs. He's going to be reaching for drugs by the time he's 12 and completely disconnected. Like he's going to tune out from me. And which brings me to something, I didn't really say this in the book, but because I've been doing this for 30 something years, I've had people that come to me with teenagers that have drug problems. Oh, my teenager's out of control. They're smoking pot. They're doing this. And they say it started last year. I'm like, actually, it didn't. It started probably 7 years ago, not with them taking drugs, but with them not counting on a parent for the support that they needed. They went elsewhere. So that's that's harsh.
Yeah.
That's harsh, but that's been my experience. And I saw in my son, I had like one of those futuristic moments of clarity that he is in a burning building. And I am poolside with a magazine, looking at him, watching the flames come in on him. And I'm like, I got to do something. So I did something, and I did something drastic. I took him out of school. And again, I have zero background in education, but I know how to raise a child, proven that. I know how to run control in a home. Like my home, obviously there's toys and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, you clean up, shower, bath times at 7, story times this, that. Like I ran it. I ran it. And it worked. So when I took my son out of school, my personal parents were like, what are you doing? He's going to be eating paint. Because they knew I'm an artist, right? And I'm like, I'll make sure it's non-toxic.
Yeah.
It wasn't until my parents live in Cincinnati and I'm in Miami. And we would visit, not very often, but every other year, every 2 years, something like that. And I took all the kids home, and Damon was 9. And by that time, 3 of them were being homeschooled, or actually all 4 of them. And my parents, who I think had 19 grandchildren at the time,
wow,
they were so impressed at how well the kids got along with each other, for one, and how respectful they were. And like when my mom, grandma, I'm like, Mom, no sugar. She goes, oh, well, we're going to make a cake right now. So she broke every one of the rules, which is the right of a grandmother. And she had the kids, and they knew their fractions. They knew their this. And it was just, she was like that. My parents then switched from against homeschooling to pro homeschooling. They're like, have you seen my grandchildren? Like, they're so smart, and they're so this, and they're so engaged. They were like, total night and day.
Yeah.
Anyway, if I can do it, others can do it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think, I was homeschooled, FYI. I was actually homeschooled from the ages of, 3rd grade till basically 12th grade. So most of my life I was actually homeschooled. So it was really like it's actually, honestly, it was so much better for me. And I've had personal experience with homeschool. My mother actually homeschooled me, believe it or not. And so I share that same experience with homeschooling your kids. And, I looking back and I'm like, wow, my mom really struggled with just getting me to sit and read and do things, so I kind of appreciate that more in terms of what you do. And again, especially if you have 4 of them, 5 of them, it's just like, wow, it's just amazing what you do.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess my next question for people, because I know your book, Enough is Enough, that's the name of your book, right? That's the name of your book. So with people like obviously who are listening, they're also parents too, who also have young kids, and they're growing up, and they're in the school system. Like, what advice do you give to those people, for people who have kids this age or are in schools? Like, what advice would you give them in terms of?
Well, I have the harsh advice. The reality is, don't put them in school. Yeah. That's the harsh, right? Figure it out. And I'm gonna speak to that point, because if anything positive came out of the pandemic, I feel people have are more alert to the nonsense, right? When I would never, like my school, we had to go on the lockdown and we had, all of our kids on computers and we were teaching from computers. Never would it ever occur to me to tell a teacher, hey, tell the students to kick their parents out of the room. We don't want them listening in on the lesson. I'm like, that's just wrong. And again, you keep to the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, the simplicity, and then you cater to what the child's purpose is. And yeah, okay, like Damon, when he was 6, he was going to grow up to be a policeman, a firefighter, and an NBA player. And I'm like, all of those are excellent choices. Did he do any of them? No, but I wasn't expecting him to.
Right.
However, our firefighters, our police officers, our NBA players, they need to be literate.
Right.
So I could tie academics into all of that. It was a support for him to reach his purpose. It's not just so that he can pass a test and look good on paper. I could care less about the test, honestly.
Yeah. It's a fascinating thing because people grow up and I'm sure you've had your fair share experience where people grow up like, oh my God, I gotta know all these things to study a test. And it's actually not really all about the test. It's how you apply the data and how you apply the information that you learn, not just studying for a test.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. And again, back in the day, I'm going to show, this is from 1883. This is a math book. And it talks about mastery. And there's like a little piece in the front, a little article in the front for the teacher. And it's talking about mastery of concepts. And it's like, take as long as it takes. If a student needs a month to learn the 4s, like the multiplication tables, do it. If he takes a year, it's time well spent because you want to master it. And they go, lower aims in arithmetic cannot be justified. And now there is no such thing as mastery.
Right.
It's a label. Oh, he's got dyslexia. He has this. He has a number. There's more labels than there are. There's lots of labels instead of somebody just like, okay, well, when do you actually add in life?
Right. What do you find is the actual solution? Because, I think the problem is with people is, how you kind of invent a problem because they don't know what to do with it. So it's kind of like, I think with people who are first-time parents or their parents, they have 2 kids, I have no idea what to do with them. So they actually, they rely on somebody else who they think they know what they're doing. So they give it to them to kind of, because they don't know. I think it's also a point of educating the parents too on what things are and what things aren't supposed to be. You know what I mean? Because I think we've lost that over time where this is the way it's supposed to go or this is the way it should happen. But I think we've lost that because now we're as we grow up and we're kind of growing older, the stupid people are becoming older, and so now they're the parents, and now they're like, I don't know what to do here, take this, So right. I kind of see that also the parents need to be educated a bit on how society works a bit.
That's right. Well, okay, so trying to keep this brief, that was one of the reasons why I wrote the book. Mm-hmm. Okay, because my children are all grown, no issues, there's no crime, no one's an alcoholic. They navigated through teenagehood without hating me. It was an easy transition, and they're all stable adults and they are producing, and I'm very proud of them. They contribute.
Yeah.
But what you say is correct, because now we have a generation of probably 2 generations of individuals who were not properly educated, who were told to pass a test or made to get a piece of paper that doesn't mean anything, and they're expected to make adult decisions and be able to navigate successfully, and they don't have the skills to do so. So it was a couple of years ago, it was before I wrote the book, where I'm like, okay, this is my problem to solve. And when I had that realization, in a way, it was kind of liberating. It was very terrifying because I have like $100. I'm a single mom and I raise 5 kids and I'm paycheck to paycheck. And I want to get out of that lifestyle, but it is what it is. And whatever, we can do a podcast on that later. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
But if all right, let's say that I take this book, right? And I break it down into a lesson plan, step by step by step. And I define the words and I give the discussion points because this is how I train my teachers at my school. I don't hire certified teachers. I train them on a lesson plan. When my teachers will tell you one for one that it wasn't until they were in my school teaching somebody else, learning from definitions of words and then real life examples, did they learn the difference between there, and there, and two, and two, and what a sentence is, and basic grammar, and basic math skills. And these people are all, like, some of them are younger, they're in their 30s, but I have a couple of teachers that are my age, late 50s, early 60s, who've been with me for 20 years, who are like, oh my gosh, I'm learning for the first time by teaching another. The key is having it in a format that somebody can easily understand and use.
Right.
And that's what I want to do. And that's not going to be accomplished on a bake sale on Friday after school. It's just not. Like, we're looking at going back, finding these textbooks, which I have almost 500 now.
Wow.
Of grammar. I mean, some of these are like incredible.
Yeah.
And this is how it was done. This does not go out of style.
Yeah. For the people who are listening, by the way, who are audio listeners only, she's showing books of what books were back in many, many years ago. From
like phonics.
Yeah.
You have a wagon and you have a W and an N and a D, and the student has to circle wagon.
Yeah.
So what I want to do is take these and put them in a format that anybody can use. Mm-hmm. It would probably be 4 products, a workbook for the child, a lesson plan for the adult, an answer key, and then some sort of visual. Because when you get into like, okay, this is Niagara Falls, I don't want the parent having to navigate Google for Niagara Falls. Like, it should just be there. And that's beyond my capability in terms of computers and that, but other people know that, those things.
Yeah.
So anyway, all right, let's just say my wish was granted this. Somebody said, a genie said, I'm going to grant you one wish. It's not for money. It's, I want this. I want to have the time and the space, and I guess the support that I can do kindergarten through 8th grade math, to where it is a seamless transition, which is what my children had. And if they get stuck on the 5s, we take them back to the 2, 3s, and 4s. Easy peasy. And then when they're ready, they go.
Yeah.
But they can somewhat go at their own pace. Again, if it's a small group, or it can be adapted to a private school, because I do with small groups of kids. My groups in my school are usually 6, 7, 8 kids. Which even with 6, 7, and 8 kids, there's going to be 1 that's fast, 2 that are slower. So you really have to navigate. The best form of education is the homeschooling. It's not always feasible. However, if I have my lesson plans, then we take out all of the nonsense of whatever is being taught in schools these days, which I could tell you horror stories of what comes across my lines as a tutor, or what parents bring me. Look what my 2nd grader is reading. And factually, it's about a woman who discovers a hair clip in the master bedroom, and it's not hers. And the child is supposed to figure out that the father is having an affair. I'm like, what? Can't we do Mr. Bear and Mr. Bunny went, in the valley to buy some berries? I don't know. Can't we just do it that way and teach them to read before we hit them with, oh, there's affairs. And by the way, your mom and dad might not make it. Statistics show that they're going to get divorced before you're in the 5th grade. I don't think that's appropriate.
Right. Absolutely. I think too, that's just not educating the right way of how to actually educate your kids, because, they're growing up into society where they need to be prepared for stuff. And this is not what they should be prepared for. I mean, sure, they should know what some of these things do and how harmful they are, but they need to be educated, like, to live and like breathe and like, how to handle things in life. So I kind of agree with that a little bit, you know?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because like I'll tell you, like one of my lessons was on taking care of the environment. And my daughter was 7. That's how like my kids were little.
Yeah.
And homeschooling, where I had 15 kids in my house. So I take them to a park on Friday. We go to the park. Like 2 parents have to help me get everybody there. We get to the park. Or no, we went on a Monday. And the park is destroyed. There's like trash, there's beers, bottles, there's broken glass. So I'm like, I put the kids back in the car. I'm like, you're not going to touch any of it because they're not going to clean that up because who knows what it is. And the kids were bummed. And I'm like, okay, but now there is an organization in Miami. It's called Parks and Recreation. And that's who you complain to. You don't complain to the grocery store clerk. You don't complain to grandma and grandpa because you're just going to rile them up.
Yeah.
So we're going to write letters to the Parks and Recreation. And so all the kids wrote letters. And now we're using their grammar, their sentence structure. They illustrated them, which my daughter's she did a mama duck crying with a whole bunch of baby ducks crying and trash everywhere.
Yeah.
Anyway, so they wrote the letters. A week and a half later, we get visited by an executive of Parks and Recreation. They're
Wow.
like, okay, so we cleaned the park and we're going to have a pizza party in your honor. And then the guy pulls me aside. He goes, please, next time, if this happens, this is my card. Just tell me. He goes, because this went all the way up. And I was like,
oh my God.
And then I told the kids, I'm like, look what you did. Look at how many animals your actions save. Your literacy, your ability to write and see a problem. Look at how many people you save.
Right.
Now people can go enjoy this park. And they were like, yay, we're changing the world, which they were. I mean, and that's how, to me, that's what education is supposed to be. It's supposed to make the child more social, more able to spot a problem and solve it, more outgoing. And it's not about the test.
Right. Yeah, that's so interesting. And it's like very fascinating too, because like, if they don't educate, I mean, I don't mean to bring politics involved in this, but like you look at what's happening. I mean, I don't know if you've been to New York recently, but now there's like the crime rate has gone up so much since COVID, and it's like just a disaster. And, they're starting to find it's because they're not really educated. They're not really understanding how life really works. And they kind of blame the system of how things are working. But in reality, they just don't know how to handle it or what to do with it. So I think, especially you, because you're educating people and parents and everyone else to kind of know what to do and what not to do. It's so valuable. And I think they bring a worthwhile person into society, and now they can make a difference. So I think that's really important.
Thank you. I want to write it up.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this. And again, it's arbitrary. It's what I feel.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I expect from a kindergartner. Does it match what the state of Florida? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I don't care about their standards because their standards would have drugged my son. So what they think about me, I don't care.
Right.
How they want to regulate me, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You get one, and they've screwed it up. So because look at the literacy of the United States right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you a little story. At the beginning of this year, I did a lesson on the Constitution. Really, it was just a preamble. And I did it with middle schoolers. And I'm like, and we had a dictionary. We had the Webster's, I think it's 1828, because whatever words were used at that time, you should have the dictionary to support that language. Mm-hmm. Because words change.
Right.
Anyway, so we went over the word govern, and I don't have it in front of me. So somebody might say, oh, but she's missing something. But the word govern was to control someone's behavior and actions. Instantly, a hand goes up. That sounds like mind control. I'm like, okay. So we go on a field trip. We're all going to the zoo, and you are put in charge of a 6-year-old. The bus parks in the middle of the parking lot, and you need to walk, 100 feet to the gate. Do you hold the child's hand, or do you let them run? They're like, no, hold the hands. I'm like, but is that mind control? They're like, no. I go, it has nothing to do with that. You're governing them. And then I would go into like, what would happen if you go home tonight for dinner and you tell your mom the dinner was awful and you can't believe she thinks she can cook? She goes, my dad would probably, it's like,
Frankly,
would come at me. I go, right. So you've been governed to know that that's inappropriate behavior.
Yeah.
And then we use that for, this is a bad example because it's more recent than what that was. But it's funny because my kids came in, like, I think Philadelphia won the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And then some idiots tear their city apart.
Right.
And the kids, my students came in, they're like, oh, these guys are uneducated. I'm like, yeah, what would have happened if they would have lost? Like, who can justify that behavior? Anyway, it was interesting because at the end of this, just the preamble, my kids were like, oh my gosh, we live in a great country. I go, is it perfect? No, but it even says, in order to form a more perfect union.
Right.
And these, and I had them write constitutions for their car, like pretend you got your dream car, this, that, the other. Anyway, it was very interactive and very hands-on. It wasn't over there because a lot of times people think things like the government, are over there, or a park is destroyed. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm like, you can always do something.
Yeah.
You can always do something.
It's always something that can be done about it.
Always something that can be done about it.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just kind of curious from you, because let's say, you run your practice and you help teach people like your own private school in a way, right? So if people want to start their own, like, is that a very difficult process, or is that what advice would you give to people for that?
Just do it. Honestly. Okay. So I'm not prepared for this yet, but my next book is really going to be how to homeschool. And for all I know, it's just going to say start. Because you can get stuck in, I need to have it perfect. I need to have it perfect. And I do bring it up. I do go into some successful actions in the book, Enough is Enough, because you could just think about it. In the meantime, your children are growing up. And by the time they're 18, you're like, I found a location. Like, no. Me, I had to take the table that I served dinner at. It was the same table that I did my artwork at, was the same table that we played games at, and I had to take the artwork out of the equation. It became a study space.
Yeah.
And I'm glad I did. It was a sacrifice. But sometimes you have to make a sacrifice. Like, I don't know if America was built on comfort.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I really appreciate the time. And I actually would like to just also too, and I'm sure you can kind of give me a couple examples or maybe one really good one if you have one. Can you name, I'd love to hear a success story that you had with a student or someone you've helped. I know you've mentioned your sons your kids a lot of times. Are there any other, with your schooling, have you ever had a very good success with someone that they just wow, thank you so much. That was just the greatest experience ever. Or even just with your book that has come with that. Have you experienced that?
Well, yeah, we have success stories all the time. And I can think of several. We had a boy, I didn't write about him in my book, but he's on my website and I can name him. His name's Jose, and he was his birth mother did not survive childbirth, and he was born. They didn't expect him to live. And he was in a coma for 3 months. And anyway, this woman volunteered at a shelter for foster kids. And here's this baby, 7 months, and they're all singing, I don't know, Old MacDonald. And the baby's off to the side. And Luisa's like, no, I want that baby in the middle. Oh, but he doesn't. I don't know what words they would possibly use to justify how they were treating this boy, because they were just neglecting him. They're like, no, he's not aware. She goes, anyway, she's like, I had a connection with this boy. Long story short, she adopts him. And when she adopts him, which is horrible, the state wouldn't let her adopt him until she agreed to drug him with Ritalin.
Oh, man.
So she put him on Ritalin when he was 3. He gets to where he's 12. He's being severely bullied in his elementary school by older kids forced to eat dirt on a playground. No teacher would do anything about it. The principal told his mother, don't do anything. He's incapable of learning. And she's like, I prayed to God for help. And it happened to be probably 2 weeks after I opened my school, Help Miami, in this shopping center next to this gym. And she's walking to the gym. She sees it. And she's like, God sent me here. And I'm like, God sends a lot of people my way. Anyway, my daughter was 16 and worked with Jose, who was at a first grade level. He could not subtract and he had very little phonetic awareness. So we put him on a kindergarten phonics program and I gave him some school responsibilities. I remember the day he was like 13 or 14. He came in with a piece of paper and slammed it on my desk. He goes, look what I just did. He just passed middle school math. Like,
wow.
He has short-term memory. He had to go over it. And then he spent 1 year extra in high school and he got a standard diploma.
Wow.
Yep. He went to trade school. He has a degree in air conditioning. And this boy knows that without us, he would have just been, oh, he's handicapped. Let's just drug him. There's no hope for him learning anything. And it was a lie. It was an absolute lie. And his mom has been working for me for like 21 years.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I really appreciate, those stories because I think these stories just show us how creative and how, people can be, and they don't have to go, like, even if we think this is what's wrong with them and this is the route they're going to take, we can actually fix their path. And I think that's what you have as stories, and just even the things that you're doing is helping kids and even parents, just how to parent and how to teach their kids what's right, what's wrong, and how to actually do schooling properly. And so I really thank you for your time that you've kind of given just to really understand how the education, how it's kind of just, to be honest, kind of broken.
It's destroyed.
Yeah. Well, it's in pieces, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I really appreciate the time you've given me, and especially you're running a school, you have kids to teach, you have a lot of teachers that practice, so I really appreciate the time you kind of given me to really go over your school, your new book. And I really love the attention that that you kind of given us to kind of understand what you do. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, I thank everyone, listening to stuff, who really likes this stuff. Please like and subscribe. And of course, I know, Barbie, you have probably a gift or something of some kind. You have, people can reach out to you or kind of find out more about you. Where's a good place they can reach you?
What they'll do is you have, I think that I created the first 5 chapters of the book as a gift, so they can download it through whatever link that you provide tied into this podcast.
Awesome. Yeah, I think people are going to love to read your book, and I think it's going to be a really good hit for people, especially new parents or people who are going to become parents. I think even maybe kids too. I don't know. Maybe kids will like this stuff too.
Yeah. No. It's easy. I write the way I speak. So It's not this stuffy, big worded cycle.
Yes. Okay, good. Well, I really appreciate the time you've given us. And if you guys, of course, want to hear more from her, definitely let us know. And of course, I thank you for joining the show. And Barbie, it was an honor for you coming on the show.